Good morning. It's yeah, 5 a.m. with me, so yeah, bear with me a bit. So, my presentation here is about great white shark cage diving and ethical conundrum. Well, it has been one of my one of the biggest privileges of my life to think about this, think about cage diving, how we're interacting with the sharks, and how the sharks are interacting with us in such a practice, which is practiced only 5 places on planet Earth. But lately, especially, when your conference was um, announced, I've been thinking about the ethical conundrum that this creates. And ethics, not only when considering the lives of the sharks, but considering lives of the people who are part of the practice, who are being affected by the practice, and indeed me as a researcher among them. So, yeah, this presentation is based on my ethnography. It's from what I know, it's the first ever cage diving ethnography in the world, and among the first multi-species perspective in human shark research. So it was based off the coast of Bluff at the very end of New Zealand. Like I said, one of the 5 places on planet Earth where cage diving happens, 1600 kilometers close to Antarctica. Yeah, and for 2 years, across 2 years, I was in the field. I was going out every day, looking at the sharks, being in the environment, being being really in the midst of this interaction, which is very unique if you really think about it, where people get in the cage after traveling thousands of kilometers from all over the world to see this animal they've only heard through myths and stories, but really has no idea. Now, what happens after that meet is a different discussion altogether. But right now, let's think about a little bit of the ethics that's involved. So, yeah, I think we have to first put this into context. That cage diving in New Zealand is a very complicated issue. I mean, there's a lot of political debate that has happened over the years about this. There's groups who want it to continue and groups who don't want this to continue. The people who do want this to continue um, are generally the cage diving operators. Some people from Department of Conservation who talks about the the realistic positive effect of such an encounter on not only the sharks but also the people who come to be part of this experience. That is where I was situated. The argument for it is that, well, that is where I was situated at least before I started the fieldwork. So, anyway, the argument for it is that cage diving helps to demystify these animals. I mean, if you see them in their natural environment, there's cognitive dissonance that certainly happens between what is a real fish and what is the hyper-real idea of them. So technically, that should help demystify them and take them out of the image of the monster that has been created in the media for the last at least 40 years. Now, furthermore, one of the biggest debate with cage diving is that cage diving actually might cause the sharks to remain in the region where these kind of operations happen, which in effect may cause harm to the to the other human water users of the region, particularly in context of New Zealand to the Stewart Islanders. And there's a lot of power fishing that goes on in New Zealand, and they have serious problem with this kind of practice too, understandably. But as of now, there's no solid evidence that cage diving, a practice like this, can actually change the behavior, aggression, or even long-term residency of an animal in the region. Also, the cage diving operators actually talk about that when there is an operation like this, it actually helps to stop any illegal killing of these fish. Now, let us remember that, yeah, one of these jaws could fetch you anything from 15,000 to $20,000 in the black market. So, people often kill them, and, primarily for the jaws, but then there's the skin, there's liver, and all those things too. So, if there is cage diving operation, the logic is they can always keep in track of the animals in the region, and that helps, to stop these killings. Now, there's also the other side of the story, right? There's always the other side of the story. So, these Stewart Islanders who have been in the region, and it's Stewart Island is about 30 kilometers from Bluff, so the last point of New Zealand, and somewhere in between Stewart Island and Bluff is where the cage diving operation actually happens. And Stewart Islanders have been in the region for 100 years, and yet they have dived there. They've reared up their children. Now they are claiming that they used to be at one with nature before these kind of operations started, that they lived with the sharks in harmony before this kind of operation started. And this in effect has created the human animal or human shark conflict in the region. But as we know, often these kind of conflicts are not results of human animal conflict, human non-human animals conflict, but generally between conflict between human groups. So again, there's a lot to get there, which I won't at this point, but the Stewart Islanders are claiming that these safe waters are now populated or infested by sharks that were not there before, which is interesting considering that white sharks were there in the region way before anyone came, for thousands of years, if not millions. And cage diving has used that aggregation of the animals to make their business. Anyway, so they are claiming that the water has become unsafe for them and for their children. Now, it is absolutely understandable. Think about this. If your child was in the water and you perceive that there's an imminent threat for them, what would you do? What would you want? Won't you want to do everything that you can to stop this? I mean, even the visuals of cage diving, when people are in the cage and they're waiting for a predator to come. I mean, I'm reminded of Jim Corbett, um, the early 19th century explorer hunter in India, who used to put goats to attract tigers so that he could hunt them. And cage diving to me feels like that if you really just think of the visuals of it. That you're putting a bait in the water, the humans in this context, and waiting for the sharks to come. The other side of the story is, when the operators are claiming that, yeah, there's really no downside to this, that no, they can actually look at the sharks being killed because there is this understanding in many global communities that if you kill a shark and you put the carcass of that shark in a region, that stops other sharks to come to that region. And the cage diving operator is saying, well, we can look into if such killings are happening. But the problem with this argument is, like I said, because of this human conflict, the sharks are being killed. How is that right? whatever the reason might be. Even if that's understanding is true, that they keep other sharks away or not, sharks are being killed for this operation. Then yeah, there's also, I've been thinking about consent, right? When I was in the boat for like months and years, every time I took videos of the people, I used to obviously had to take written consent from them so I could include them in my book, in my documentary. By the way, my book is coming out in the next few weeks. So how did I, or how should I take a consent from the shark when I'm taking videos of them or data of them when they're interacting with the humans? If the argument is in multi-species ethnography, yes, that we admire and accept the agency of both the humans and the non-humans in the activity, then where am I giving regard to that agency in perspective of consent? I'm not sure how to even do that, but it's certainly something to think about. Lastly, I think I had been thinking about my own ethics as a researcher in the field. What happens, with operations, with sharks, is like, we are always going after an image, right? I think even the shark scientists are going after an image. Like, look at me, I'm the explorer, the adventurer and whatever, and it's still preying on that image. Same thing, when the cage diving operators are talking about, well, they're trying to demystify the shark through this operation. They're still image using that image of that jaw and that big shark coming after you. Well, they're promoting. So yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know where my position is right now. I used to, obviously, the more you know, the less you know, right? Even multi-species perspective with shark research. Is it really possible? I am really having doubts in that. And what's the point of this research? Will it actually create an alteration? Would actually create some substantial change? I'm not sure. That's why I have been actually working recently on a transdisciplinary approach to human shark research, where we don't only think, rather collect data, but analyze data, um, disseminate it, and also look at the policy and how is that affected. Because I don't think any researcher who finds himself or herself in this kind of situation can only be happy with just the data they are taking and thinking, well, whatever happens with this happens. I think it's my responsibility, mine, if not anyone else's, to think how whatever I learn can be disseminated to the people that actually need to know that, and through multimodality, not just written text, because that is not enough. That is not enough. So anyway, these were my thoughts. Um, I'm Professor Raj Sekhar Aich. I'm in India right now. I'm in Calcutta right now. Um, yeah, my work is the holistic study of culture and natural scapes shaped by physical and symbolic interactions of humans with the marine environment and life forms. It's been great being here. I have a deep connection with Exeter. Um, and Exeter really saved my life in more ways I could explain. So thank you for that. And I look forward to talking with you, taking your questions, and learning from you. Cheers.